And we're here with third edition of the Striped Sox podcast. I'm the White Sox fan who is currently crying in depression, Justin Levy.
And I am the Tigers fan who is depressed that we lost the series to the A's, Jonathan Malama.
And as we said, this is our third edition. So if you haven't seen the first two, don't worry. There's always time to watch it because there's plenty of time in the world, and baseball is a long season, so lots more to come. And as we're going to kick off like we did last episode, we are going to start with what impressed us, what didn't impress us this past week. Jonathan, kicking it off with you. Bat us with a leadoff single out here.
Well, to start off, I'm actually going to keep from anybody from getting a hit because Ronel Blanco and his no-hitter and the half no-hitter he threw the other night is going to be what impressed me most this past week. Um, yeah, he just impressed me. Anytime there's a no-hitter, really, it impresses you, especially against such a good team in the Blue Jays. I think you have a little bit to add on that too.
Yeah, I mean, you had 15 innings of one hit ball, 14 and two-thirds exactly of no hits in consecutive innings to start the season. That's absolutely unheard of, especially from a guy who's pretty much in your rotation to replace the Hall of Famer Justin Verlander until he's back. So that's just how much more efficient could you get out of that from a pitcher who's going to be a spot guy? However, he's been the one bright spot for Houston, but that's going to be in a little bit later. We're going to hold you in suspense there. It's going to be sitting on deck as we're still going through what impressed us this week.
Yep. And next up, stepping to the plate is Bryce Harper, who had a 3 home run game, including a grand slam to break out of his record-long slump, which is also why I'm wearing the Bryce Harper jersey today. So really impressive. I think anytime that you have a guy who hits 3 home runs in a game, regardless of scenario, it's impressive. And then finally, Pittsburgh. Like,
Raise the Jolly Roger.
I don't think anybody was really expecting them to do this good. Like, I was expecting them to be decent, but to be one of the best teams in baseball right now. Granted, it's early in the season. There's a lot of baseball to be played, but early on, really, they are impressing. And it's kind of exciting to see Pittsburgh, who hasn't been a great team in the last, I would even say decade, just be back to being a prominent team again.
I mean, you kind of stole those words right out of my mouth, at least with just not necessarily Pittsburgh, but the entire NL Central in general. Every team is above 500. Like, that's kind of unheard of, which also I will say with the Pirates, I was the one of the believers. I was one of the dark horse believers. I am saying this every episode. I was with the Pirates bandwagon. Don't at me, but you can go watch the first episode and you can hear why I think the Pirates are going to be better than people think. I mean, they're putting it all together and they're looking pretty good. Obviously, they're 8-2 starting the year. They've beaten a presumably World Series contender in Baltimore. I mean, it's early, but still, that is an impressive feat nonetheless. Well, touching them up on the NL Central, I'm going with, unfortunately, I have to say my crosstown rival in Chicago on the north side. I mean, they just beat the Dodgers in a series, took care of business against the Rockies. I mean, how good is this Cubs team exactly? We're going to go to the numbers. They're top 10 in the MLB in batting average, top 10 in home runs, top 10 in slugging, top 10 in walks, tied for first in on base percentage. Well, with pitching, they're top 10 in strikeouts already. I mean, how dominant and all around is this team? And they're young. They can make this sustainable. Just one or two moves. If they're in this thing and they're looking this competitive, one or two moves could really put them over the top and actually challenge the Dodgers with their Monstar type lineup, as we saw in Wrigley this past weekend. And not only with the NL Central, you have we were talking about Ronel Blanco, but I'm going to talk about one bright spot on my Chicago White Sox, and that's Garrett Crochet. Dude has not started a game in his MLB career until this season. He comes in and in 18 innings, about three starts, he has allowed four total earned runs, one walk, and 21 strikeouts, which currently leads the entire MLB. Rip Shane Bieber, who had that moniker for until his unfortunate injury. But this dude was not a starter and immediately comes out and is healthy and is now averaging 10 and a half Ks per nine. Like how much better could you get as a starting pitcher, especially one so young? Like it seems like the White Sox may have found their future ace, which again, the one bright spot right now on the South Side.
It is quite impressive what he's been able to do so far this season. I know when they announced him as their opening day starter, I had very low hopes for him.
It was head scratching.
It really is like to see you put a relief pitcher out there and to have his first start be opening day. It's a little bit weird, but he really has proven it besides, the stumble to start against the Tigers with the loss, which he didn't even play bad in. It just happened to be that he got really no help offensively. He's been absolutely amazing. And as much as I love to see that happening, I also hate to see it happening because he's in my division. But it really is a great story and something to keep watching as he continues to develop.
So as we move on now to what is not impressive, some errors out here. So I'm gonna go fishing with my first one and start with Miami. What is going on with the fish? They are 1-9. Yikes. They pretty much have lost all their games at home. I think all their games, most of their games were at home where they lost. And they just declined to pick up manager Skip Shoemaker's fifth year option, even though he was manager of the year last season and has had an influx of injuries to his what could have been top 10 pitching staff before the season even began, as Yuri Perez is having Tommy John out for the year. Like he was dealt a really tough hand right here. And the great Art Rowe in Moneyball, as he said, with his 1 year contract now, or I guess I'll paraphrase, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to put my best foot forward if I have no assurance that I'm even going to be back next year? Like, what am I managing for?
Yeah, and I think with that, the only thing he really can manage for is hopefully another team notices him and wants to sign him to be their manager if Miami's not going to put that forward and end up extending him. Which maybe they're going to try to extend him and they declined his option because they want to sign him now versus later. But it definitely is a really weird move on their part to not pick up that fifth year option on his contract.
Then I guess moving on to the next one, I'm gonna go a little out of order with my own notes, but there is a city missing in Minnesota. Minnesota's two cities, Twin Cities, obviously. They had the Minneapolis, which is going to be their pitching, and St. Paul, which is going to be their hitting. Where, in my analogy, where is St. Paul? Where is their hitting? Who is it coming from? Because it is non-existent. They are the one team that has scored less runs than the White Sox and have less hits than the White Sox. How? Where is their hitting? Where is the offense?
Personally, I think it's impressive that they are hitting less than the White Sox. Um, just because the White Sox haven't done much this year, as you know. I'm sure most of the people watching this know. But yeah, it's weird, especially with how well the Twins are projected to do this season. I don't know what's up with them. Similarly, you have the Tigers in that position, also in the NL or the AL Central, and our bats just aren't going either, which I understand. We're a very young team and they don't have a lot of experience in MLB at bats. But I was at the game Saturday and it's just it's not fun when, you're not getting hits. And the few hits you do get, you strain guys on base. And even when the pitching, which the pitching Saturday wasn't the greatest, but it wasn't bad either, you know. But even when you have solid pitching, you're losing these games because just you're not getting runs. We had, what was it, 6 games in a row that we went into the ninth either tied or a 1-run game that we ended up winning. But most of those games were only like 1 or 2 run games. So I would love to see the bats wake up. I think it's just a matter of time before a lot of our young guys get used to MLB pitching, and hopefully the bats wake up.
It's always the cold hibernation when it's April ball, but as we've seen, June, the bats come alive, balls start jumping off, and see a lot more hits and home runs. So we'll see what happens once the warm weather hits. And so I guess my third one is not necessarily a poor performance on a bad team, but I'm just gonna say Vlad Jr., when he shushed the Yankees crowd down 6 runs after a home run. I get it. It's a rivalry. You're in New York, and you want them to pretty much be quiet, say it nicely, but you're down 6 runs. There's a time and a place to do that. It's not when you're losing by that many runs.
No, not at all. Like if that was the go ahead home run, I could see it. Like that's an electric moment. But yeah, when you're down that much, why are you shushing? Like you aren't silencing anything, really.
All they're gonna do is make the New York crowd even raunchier.
Exactly. They're just gonna get more rowdy and everything. And again, as you said, it's a rivalry game, but yeah, like again, I could understand if it was tying the game or if it was a go ahead, but down 6, it's like, okay. I would have rather him saved it for later in the season when he does that, hopefully.
Yeah.
And, you know, that would be a much better time for that.
You still have one more that's not impressive to you?
Um, yes, the Houston Astros, and I want to preface this by saying I understand they've played the Yankees, the Blue Jays, and now the Rangers, but they have the same, you guys have the same record as the A's. Like, come on, guys. You are meant to be the powerhouse of the AL. You're one of the favorites to win the World Series, or at least go to the World Series and represent the AL. You need to be winning these games. There's no easy way to put it. So,
Especially
yes,
at home.
you're losing to good teams. And yeah, as you were just saying there, at home too. And like, yeah, these are good teams, but you're going to be playing good teams in the playoffs. It's early in the season, but you need to be playing, you know.
Would you say it's time to say, Houston, we have a problem?
I would indeed say Houston has a problem and they need to figure something out quickly. So, and then my final thing is the A's. So they announced this past week that they will be moving to Sacramento for the following 3 seasons and playing at the Rivercat Stadium, Sutter Health Park. I'm really disappointed in ownership. I do think that something could have been worked out with Oakland. Do I think it was the greatest deal for ownership? No, especially when a ballpark is being offered to you for very little, if not free. But I think that the proper thing to do would have been to stay in Oakland. And again, this is just me as an outsider. I'm not the owner of the team, but I do believe that the proper thing to do is stay in Oakland and, to continue to play that out until Vegas is ready. And personally, I'm still hoping something happens where, either the team gets sold and moved back to Oakland, or Oakland's going to be awarded an expansion team with the name. I doubt that either are going to happen, but I would still love to see it. And at the end of the day, I'm really just disappointed in A's ownership and how all of this has gone.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that the A's are going to be the Sacramento A's, but I
Oh,
mean,
not according to them. They're just going to be referred to as the A's or the Athletics as of right now.
so are we talking about like a Washington football team type thing where there's no real team name, it's just we are the Athletics.
Well, there is a team name, there's no city name, is how they're saying it as of right now, but they also have filed for trademarks over the Sacramento A's. So I could see it coming, but as of right now, they haven't announced that they will be being referred to as that.
So it's the opposite. It is now insert team name, insert city name, A's. versus
Yes,
the Washington insert football team name.
correct.
Okay.
Or the Oklahoma City Baseball Club, which is the
Yes.
AAA affiliate for the Dodgers currently.
Yes. Great team names out here.
Mhm.
As we went through our impressed and not impressed, we are now going to get ready for a fan favorite that we started last week, which was the randomest poll player. Where Jonathan, you were so kind enough to actually set up the wheel of beautifulness out here. Look at this amazing
Yes.
wheel. It's beautiful.
So we will give it a spin, and wherever it lands on, each one of us has to give a player that has played that position, and the most random player that we name out of those two will earn us a point for our scoreboard. Ooh, and it
Outfielder.
looks like it's going to be outfield. Justin, I
Yay,
will
and we
let
get
you
a we get a round of
first.
applause.
Yay.
You're next.
Actually, because you're the defending champ, would you like to say yours first or last?
I will go second. I always feel like you gotta close the game. I like being the home team over the road team, you know?
I was expecting that, and I was kind of hoping that you wouldn't pick that, but yeah. So outfielder, I would go with Kirk Neuenhuis, formerly of the Mets and the Brewers.
Mhm. Yes, I do know Kirk Neuenhuis. Oh boy, this is where you get really random. But I'm gonna go with a former White Sox out here, and his fantastic name is Carlos Quentin.
Okay.
There you go. Random names out here.
We might have to decide the winner of this in post.
Ooh, I have a actually better idea. We're gonna go to a coin flip because those are both random.
We're gonna go to a coin flip? Okay. So are you calling in the air because you're the home team?
Oh, no, you're the road team. You call it in the air. It's like football
Okay.
rules.
Okay.
Call in the air.
I'm gonna go tails.
Well, you already lost its head.
Oh,
2 for 2.
great. We're in a 2-0 hole now.
You could have looked at the coin flip. It
I
stopped
thought it
playing.
lagged on my end. I thought it lagged on my end. So,
2 for 2.
anyways, I'll get you next week. I'll get you
Comment
next.
down below who is your randomest outfielder.
Yeah, and who you think should have won that too.
Don't worry,
Honestly, it's a toss up. I think either one of us win, but comment down below who you think's the more random player. Kirk Neuenhuis or what was yours again? It was
Carlos Quentin.
Quinton. Thank you.
Or you can also put down who your most randomest outfielder is that you can think of.
Yeah, can you think of a more random outfielder than us? Put it down below.
Oh, I just thought of a better one too.
Well, we
Grady
can save it for
Sizemore.
another time then.
All right, I'm just saying it now. Grady Sizemore.
Grady Sizemore is a good one. I wouldn't. That one's random, but I don't think it's the randomest out of those.
I don't know why he just popped up on my mind because I wanted to go Hall of Famer. I'm like, nah, if I go Hall of Famer, I ain't random.
Right.
All
But
right. So now we're gonna make the call of the pen as we're gonna talk about some pitching issues that's been going on in the MLB.
so recently there have been a lot of Tommy John injuries, as I'm sure many people have seen in the news. This isn't something that is super new. It's been happening more and more over the last few years. Really, since around 2010, you've seen a much larger jump in it. Um, you have the MLBPA blaming the pitch clock and the shortening of the pitch clock this year to the leaps in it. You have the MLB defending it with their John Hopkins study of the velocity and spin rate of the pitchers being why. And I believe you have another possible reason.
Yes, as most recently, a couple days ago, I watched a an old interview with Tyler Glasnow talking about the sticky stuff scandal with Spider Tack, and pretty much what he said was it has to deal with the sticky stuff, and umpires really cracking down on the sticky epidemic of what is on players' hands for gripping the baseball because Glasnow's issue was, as he said, he used a combination of sunscreen and rosin, which is legal. You can
Mhm.
do that, at least before the sticky crackdown.
Yep.
And his reasoning and what he used it for was to get a better grip on the baseball. Not that it was not to access his spin rate, not to increase velocity. It was just mostly to get more grip on the ball. So he said after the sticky stuff crackdown, he went into a start against the Nationals, where, again, he quoted, he said that he had his best start. However, his fastball, he had to put extra grip on it to get the same velocity and movement, and he had to change up his curveball grip. And because of that, he was fine. He said it was one of his best outings. And then he went into, and then the next day he woke up and muscles he didn't even know he had were sore because of the changing in grip. And so that could actually be, at least what I think, listening to Glassnow's interview, was is the issue, which is more pitchers are having to change up their grip on pitches, as you said, to try and keep up with velocity, to try and keep up with spin rate. And by doing that without actually necessarily having a grip on the ball, especially when the MLB changed the ball a few years ago, that now all of a sudden pitchers are doing not natural things that they did for years. And that's an increase, and now it's putting way more pressure on their arms and shoulders. And I don't know. That seems like it could be a nice. I see that correlation to being why there's more elbow injuries, why there's more shoulder injuries, why there's an uptick in Tommy John and pitchers being out for the season, and or at least not necessarily seasons, but for a long while.
Yeah, and not that overhand throwing is a natural movement. I think there are multiple studies that show that that isn't, but to your point, like the more traditional way of throwing it, where you have the more grip to it and you aren't having to strain yourself so much to get the extra velocity and the extra spin, the fact that they're having to strain more now could definitely be leading to it. I know Keith Miser, who is the doctor for the Texas Rangers and the leading surgeon for Tommy John. He has come out and said, I forget where I read this. I really wish I remembered what the article was. Um, he said that the big thing is guys are trying to perform and throw harder and have the big spin rate, especially with stuff like the sweeper, where they're putting so much torque on their elbow and arm that it's too much for the UCL to handle a lot of the time. And that's where you're seeing it. And teams keep on pushing more and more for faster pitches, and for more movement because they're harder to hit. And I get it, it's always nice to have somebody who's harder to hit, but there's a certain point where you have to go from, okay, do I want the peak performance now, or do I want longevity over the whole season of slightly less peak performance? And I believe it was still him, but it might have been somebody else who was saying the core of the, or yeah, the core of this issue really is teams aren't they aren't so much focused on the players and their health so much as the players and what they can do to win games now. So if they happen to get injured, they get injured, bring somebody else up who can do the same stuff or very similar stuff versus, okay, back off a little bit. It's fine if you're throwing a mile per hour slower, if you're having an inch less break, on your curveball or whatever, but you're going to be able to pitch the whole year. So the big thing for me is you really just see the upticks in this since, all of these guys have started throwing harder and with more spin rate and everything. And that's really been since the late 2000s, early 2010s. And the data really backs that up. Normally, I'm a guy who supports the PA a ton and will back them up about everything. But this is definitely a time where I'm not seeing eye to eye with them. And I definitely think that the MLB and their Johns Hopkins study and Dr. Miser with his word is definitely the correct thing on this.
I mean, because you were saying with the harder throwers, I mean, Spencer Strider is having a second opinion on his elbow, but he's probably going to be out for the year. Jonathan Loizaga is already out for the year. At least those are, and Framber Valdez, and on Monday he got his, or he was scratched from his start due to elbow soreness. which obviously is not a good sign. That could be the UCL. And that not even and those are hard throwers. But as we see at the other end with good stuff, Shane Bieber also has a UCL injury because it looked like he was trying to more revive his career and keep it going at a high level. So he had to add more break to his breaking ball, to his curveball and his slider, which again is more pressure on your elbow, and that's where you get these more injuries. But those are just like the names in the past week. Like already out this season, Garrett Cole has an elbow problem, who's going to be out until at least June. Jacob DeGrom is out for a while still. He was out since with arm problems since last year. Verlander's still rehabbing. He's coming back. Scherzer, pretty sure had surgery on his shoulder in the past season, off season.
I believe so.
So he's out for a while. Walker Bueller's been out for a couple years now with arm problems. Like these are the hard throwing guys, as not only that, but they're stars. These are
Mhm.
who the MLB are trying to promote, and they're now out for seasons, and the
And
MLB is kind of just like brushing it off a little bit.
yeah, and going to stuff pitchers, you have Tony Goslin also out with, I believe, Tommy John, but it might have been his shoulder. I know it happened end of last season, but even so, he has incredible break on his pitches, and you have to point to the increased spin rate and just the torque that you're putting on your arm.
I mean, it's an epidemic that they need to find a solution to because you can't keep on losing pitch. You can't have pitchers be dropping like flies every single week.
No, I totally agree. And like the sport right now is so pitching dominant, and you've heard different things to help the batters out that have been proposed. Backing up the mound, um, you know, making the balls jump a little bit more, the bigger bases, all of that, the limited pickoffs, all of those to help offense out. And really, it comes down to these guys are throwing harder and the ball's moving more because teams want that, but also at the same time is shortening these guys' careers a lot of the time because they're trying to do that. So it's an interesting space where we're trying to figure out how to handicap the pitchers, but yet because the pitchers are trying to be so much better, they're hurting themselves. So I don't really know what the solution is to this, but I think it might just be, maybe the PA standing up for their young players, being like, hey, we need to relax a little bit on these guys' arms. It could be players standing up for themselves. It might take ownership of a team being like, hey, we're not going to push them as hard. But then you see that they're staying on the roster longer, they're not getting as hurt. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't think anybody does right now, but there definitely needs to be something done.
Yeah, this is a discussion that we could go on for hours about,
Yes.
but we do got to somewhat keep the ball rolling a little bit.
Hmm.
So that's going to actually kind of lead us to our question of the day, talking about pitchers of who's your favorite motion? Which pitcher ever had your favorite motion?
Favorite throwing motion or favorite like full windup and everything?
Full windup.
Full windup. I think the most iconic would be Craig Kimbrell with, going like this to get his pitch and then coming set. But favorite throwing motion, I would say Tyler Rogers with his submarine. I just love the unconventional
Show
arm slot. Everybody knows Tyler Rogers arm slot. It's way down. I Yeah, it's way down. If you don't know it, go look it up. Yeah, it's just some wicked stuff. So I just love the unconventional arm slots because it's something unique and different.
over here. A big. There's always good names to pick from. Full windup, I like Dontrell Willis. It's like
Mhm.
always good. Most iconic, at least my favorite one. That's also iconic. I love Juan Marshall. Can't go wrong with a super high leg kick. I'm. It's just so. It's the picture you think of with pitching windups is Juan Marshall's leg pretty much going above his head.
Yeah.
Then I guess throwing motion, kind of a theme. kind of like with the sidearm too, but with Rogers, but I like Randy Johnson. If you're 6'10" and your arm slot is coming from about here, obviously, or I guess I should do the other side, even though I'm a righty. Your arm slot's coming from here, like, and you're 6'10" and you're throwing 100 miles an hour. If you're in the lefty batter box, or left-handed batter's box, I'm kind of terrified of that because that ball might come at me and I don't really have time to move.
Yeah, no,
So,
I definitely agree with that.
so before we wrap up here, do want to mention that Monday, April 8th, has been 50-year mark since Hank Aaron broke Babe Ruth's record of 714 home runs by hitting a two-run shot, 715 on today's date. I mean, what does that mean to you, just as a baseball fan?
It's just iconic, you know. This morning I got up, I watched the clip. It's just iconic and such a big milestone. Um, really the Ruth record, even I don't know if anybody's going to break that, you know, much less the Mays record. Or Hank, not Mays, Hank record. Mays was also a legend, of course. But Hank, like the big thing with him and Ruth and you know, anybody else who's up around 700 home runs is just you have to have the longevity and you have to be able to have that power for that long. Um, I think the closest active player right now is somewhere in the mid threes, like 340 something. I want to say maybe it's like 360 or something like that. I think it's Giancarlo Stanton who's the leader right now, but he's been around for quite a while and he is not catching it. Or unless he has a crazy resurgence of just sheer dominance, but he would have to be like early 2000s Barry Bonds level of dominant to really catch that. So the 50th year anniversary of him passing Babe Ruth, it's a special day. And yeah, it really is a testament to Hank's career.
I'm glad that I'm glad that there is now like an honoree for Hank Aaron in today. Just, I mean, as you said, it is such an iconic moment, and it really shows like the beauty of the game of baseball itself. Just that's kind of like what where the game is going. It's all these unbreakable records. Everyone thinks is unbreakable, and something comes along, special player comes along, and they break it, and it's beautiful.
Hmm.
You never know who's coming next, and it's always a progression to watch, and that's what's so great about the season being 162. Even though some people don't necessarily agree with the length, is you can see these unbelievable feats,
Hmm.
like you something you didn't think of would ever be possible is possible, and not only that,
Right.
but it's just a life lesson too. Anything's possible.
Hmm. Something I also do want to point out from the clip of that is the times are 50 years ago to now. Like you see him as he's rounding the bases, people running out there with him from the stands to run alongside. Like it's just crazy to think of because I guess any big game from, you know, 30, 40, 50 years ago, you see people storming the field and stuff after. But it's just crazy to think of now like that happening if we'll just throw out the name of Tungsten Armo Doyle, you know, gets called up tomorrow and he goes on this legendary career and breaks the all-time home runs record. Like nobody's going to be on the field running with him, you know, when he
They will be arrested.
that try. Right, they'd be arrested, and I don't even think they'd get to him. Or if they did, they'd be tackled very shortly after. You know, like the amount of streakers that get on the field aren't a ton. Even the ones who do, they get arrested right after. So you're not really going to have that.
I mean, hey,
And
The Super Bowl streaker, he bet on a streaker and he hit that bet.
that is true. That is true. But yeah, I think it's just crazy the difference in times um for that. And also I believe it was his great grandson who threw out the opening pitch today at the Braves game. So that was another cool thing in honor of him.
Lovely moment.
Yeah.
Just shows that the past and the present are always always interlocking, especially with the game of baseball.
Yeah, definitely.
And on that sentimental note, this has been another edition of the Striped Sox podcast. So hopefully if you're hooked now, or if you're not, be hooked.
Yeah. So make sure to like and subscribe down below. Also in the description are our socials. We are at Striped Sox Pod on both Instagram and X, formerly Twitter. Those are both linked below.
Yeah, I had to roll my eyes at a great name of X.
Mhm.
It will be Twitter. It will always be Twitter. But on that
Yeah.
note, this has been Justin Levy.
And Jonathan Melma.
Just enjoy the game of baseball.
Yeah, and we will see you next week.